So, Blue Heron is a film from Sophie Ramvari, and it is just. This is such a fascinating film because while I do think it's definitely a very personal project that is meant to reflect Sophie's own her own past and kind of like coming to terms with her childhood memories and more or less the idea of nostalgia. But I think it's going to touch a lot of people like it did me, because I mean we all have hazy memories of childhood that we'll never be able to fully remember, let alone replicate. This is a vulnerability that I think Sophie Ramvari takes with her semi-biographical film Blue Heron. She never settles on it as a perfect reflection of her family life in the 1990s. What she's essentially doing is painting the echoes of years that we can never return to or fully recall. And although that angle alone would make the film appealing on its surface, the daring to tinker with this subject through the meta and surreal elements it just leaves a far greater emotional impact. The movie is set in 1990s Canada, and it follows the young girl Sasha, who is getting used to her new suburban life with her large family. From her eyes, we can see all the problems from a distance. Sophie can sense that there's like financial problems, the way that her mother and her father argue, and there's also a debate they have about how they are going to raise their children. Like, the mother clearly struggles a lot, while the father is a little bit more absent, but does find fun stuff to do with his children every now and then. And the full situation is never fully revealed. We're just kind of like watching the frustrations from the curious innocence of childhood. So we're essentially seeing it from Sasha's point of view. So Sasha she'll take note of her quiet teenage brother, of Jeremy. So Jeremy has a lot of problems. You know, he's very quiet. He's distant from his parents. He'll run off. He'll spend money that his parents gave him for other things, and he'll steal. In particular, Sasha witnesses Jeremy stealing when the parents don't. So it feels like we're seeing aspects of childhood that only Sophie notes, but also like we're not getting the full picture. Like, Sophie kind of watches her father try to console a very like violent and angry Jeremy in his bedroom, and Sasha's just kind of like looking from the window outside the house, not being able to hear everything or know everything in that moment. But Sasha can see quite a bit. Like, she catches glimpses of her parents arguing, and their efforts to shield their children don't conceal everything. She can see the handcuffs on Jeremy, and it's clear that he won't be in the house much longer. And while Sasha's father favors video recordings of their suburban life, there's a whiff of uncertainty in how much that Sasha remembers. Atmospherically, there's so much that seems familiar from such a childhood, and as somebody who grew up in the 90s, I can relate. You know, the shuffling of cereal in the plastic container, the sounds of Looney Tunes coming off the TV on a lazy day, the distant lawn mowers, and foreground splashing of the sprinkler on a summer day. And I think like Ramvari captures all these little moments in a way that makes us feel like we've been here and that we can connect with Sasha. But the film throws us a curveball as Sasha ages into adulthood, taking more notice of video recordings and troubled families. In the same way that the movie steps out of time, so does Sasha, who meshes into a transmundane field trip into the past. And without giving away this surprisingly somber revelation, the film feels as though it's tackling the question of what we would do if we woke up in the 1990s again. And the answer delivered in this movie is one that feels more personally honest and emotionally devastating. So there's a deeply personal and even tragic manner in which Sophie forces the audience into the same position of questioning of our own memories. Like, we've all had those thoughts about what we could do if we went back in time and knew what we knew now. But I mean, what would we really do? Would we try to prevent what happened to us, or just experience it, just try to understand it better, through adult eyes? Would we make any difference, and could we make any difference? These are a lot of interesting questions that I think Sophie kind of low key tackles when she gets to this very like emotionally honest, but also like gut wrenching third act that just surprises you. There are only like bits and pieces of Sasha's history that are revealed, that we're kind of left in a position of trying to put the pieces together from her small stature. So a close moment with her father has her using MS Paint to draw an animal on the computer, and it's a very familiar activity for any household that grew up with a computer. And it's portrayed with so much more clarity than trying to understand what was going on with Jeremy, because it's a very uncomfortable thing to address, like, a very troubled teenager. And you want to like think back, if I were in that moment, and if I had the adult mind that I have now, and the experience that I do, what would I say to my sibling who was in trouble? What would I do to make it better? What would I confess? What would I talk about? And there are answers to those questions, but I think they're honest in a way that, on a fantastical level, you say, yeah, well, I do this, this, and this, and I would let all these feelings spill out, and I would warn them about this, and I would try to make their lives better, and I would try to like fix the future. But in truth, if we were kind of in that moment, we just kind of want to just savor it, just try to understand better. And I think that's what makes the film so powerful, is that it's not a film about trying to unravel the mystery of the past or trying to fix it. It's more about trying to understand it and trying to be in that moment. Like, there's a very sobering moment where Sasha more or less just kind of like confronts her parents and just realizes what they were going through and what they saw in Jeremy and the feud that they were having, and it makes them so much more relatable rather than just being these just being a patriarch and a matriarch that are just off to the side making all these edicts like they're gods that we can't fully understand. No, they're just human beings struggling to maintain a family, and it's not going well. And there's, even though you can't see like what's eroding the family from the outside, you can sense there is something wrong. And I think that's what Sasha is trying to figure out in this film more than anything else. So throughout the movie, there is a maddening mystery with no lucid conclusion. We know the parents are having money problems, but we don't know many of the details. We know that Jeremy has psychological problems, but we never gain a full perspective of where his problems have led him. All we're left with is that sensation of internal emotional closure as an adult Sasha navigates this familiar landscape of unresolved feelings like a ghost haunting the place where she once lived. Though the film ends with a composition of her thoughts, there is always a lingering tingle about how close it comes to cracking its own fiction as it delves deeper and deeper into a very personal story. The film nearly becomes a form of therapy as Sasha attempts to better understand her parents' perspective and to shape the words that she would want to, basically the words that she would want to have with her brother if she could have just one more moment with him again. This is the type of movie that sticks with you for days after seeing it, forcing you to question yourself, kind of in the same way that Ramvari taps into her reflections of the past. The bleeding of filmmaking and nostalgia is presented in a way that never feels indulgent, but is always curious to learn the more uncomfortable truths. In the same way that Sasha listens behind closed doors to the family arguments, Ramvari still feels like she's doing the same with her movie, composing a narrative from within herself and seeing what personal revelations just kind of bubble to the surface. We are all just children, still struggling to understand ourselves and the world, with a few moments here and there where we witness new perspectives and come to terms with our cobbled thoughts. And Blue Heron is just a brilliant exploration of that part of our minds in this very meditative movie that just it gripped me from beginning to end, and it's just emotionally devastating by the end. So yeah, I absolutely loved Blue Heron. It forced me to recall so much of my own childhood and debate what I would do if I went back there in a very personal and meaningful way that I felt just like resonated so hard. It's personal enough where I think a lot of people will be able to see themselves in this type of movie and just hit you deep within your heart. So yeah, I loved the hell out of Blue Heron. This is one of the best movies of 2026.